Okay, so I was talking to a friend and she asked me if Jesus was walking the earth today, if his ministry was unfolding in today's time, if this is like the book of Matthew, Mark, and Luke and John being written, like if this was that time, and he was walking, would you follow him? And whew, I had to really, first, of course, I was like, absolutely. Like, I'm absolutely following God. Like, absolutely. But then I really thought about it. Will we still disqualify him in the way that they disqualified him in the Bible? And I think we always want to say no, like I would totally, because I know there's pastors that have been pastors since they were 2 and 3 years old. They've been preaching their whole lives, and I know that the Lord has called them. And we like to say that we would, but I really feel like we would discount Jesus today much in the same way they would. And I think we do it all the time. We discount the people that God has sent, or we decide that they cannot do what God has called them to do because of their age, because of their race, because of their gender, because of how they present. We decide that God hasn't called them and can't use them. And we would do the same thing to Jesus. We would say, oh, he hasn't been to seminary. He's an unmarried man. How can he pastor a church? He can't meet the qualifications because we don't know if he can handle his own household because he doesn't have a wife. He's young. I know we like to say, oh no, we'll take Jesus at 30 years old, but a lot of churches still would not consider a pastor who is not in his 40s or 50s. There are churches who would not accept Jesus because he is obviously a man of color. And I think that we really feel like we would follow him. We would really trust him, but he's an unmarried man of color who doesn't own anything. Like, he doesn't own a house. He doesn't own animals. He doesn't have fields. He doesn't have any of those things. And in modern time, he doesn't have a house. He doesn't have a car. He doesn't have a whole lot of clothes. Like, he's traveling with a bunch of guys. There's no way we would say, oh yeah, come in and lead us. Yep, pastor my church. I think we would discount him for the same reasons. He doesn't come from the right place. He doesn't have the right education or the right way to present himself. He shows up in the way that God tells him to show up. He says and does the things that his Father tells him. And I think sometimes we will discount or determine that he would be unqualified by today's standards still. Okay? I also want to point out one thing. While we are deciding if we're following Jesus, while we're deciding if we're going to do the things that he tells us to do, let's consider our reason for it. Like, what's in your heart on it? Are you following Jesus because there's a benefit? In the Bible, following him got you fed, got you healed, got you delivered, got you set free. But there are people who followed him just because he spoke the truth, just because he could explain the Bible in a way that made it relatable and understandable and applicable. They could do this stuff. They could live this way. And some people followed for truth, but some people followed for the next time he was going to perform a miracle. Let me keep going to weddings, hoping Jesus shows up. Let me keep sitting outside in these fields where I see there's a bunch of people gathered listening because he might just give us a little lunch. Are you following him for the food? Are you following him for the blessing? Are you following him for what you can get? Or are you following him for the truth and what you can give and who you can be in your community with his anointing and his blessing? So let's make sure that we are following Christ for Christ's sake, for the truth, for knowledge, for growth, for change, and not just for the blessings. And while we are attempting to follow better, let's make sure that we are not disqualifying the Christ in people because they don't meet our standards or what we think they should have in order to do what God told them to do. God doesn't call the qualified all the time. He qualifies those he called. Y'all be blessed.